Okay, so this is a story about not only my past life, I guess, but also my best friends. People always joke around about us, not in a mean way really, but I just don't think they understand it. We don't really share our story with others too often because they don't seem to get it, but after hearing all of the stories that you've done previously, I feel like our story would fit here with you and your audience. And I would love to share it with more people that are open-minded, so here it is. It all began when my family relocated to a new city. We had one major move prior. We'd moved to a different state, and I remember feeling stressed about it. At the age of 8, not wanting to leave my room. I loved it, but when they said that I could choose the color of my new room, it made me feel better about it. Then, when I was 10 or 11, we moved again, but this time it was just to a different city but the same state. However, while I would be going to a whole new school, having to meet new friends and, once again, leave behind my awesome pink bedroom, I somehow felt better about it. I was actually excited about it, for no other real reason other than just moving. No one thought much of it at the time. Maybe my parents were relieved that I wasn't as difficult about it, who knows. So, I started at my new school, and yes, I was excited, but also still a bit nervous, and maybe even shy. However, I didn't get to really be the quiet, reclusive new kid because, as I walked into the room, there was a young girl standing in the back, like she was expecting me, and she was all smiles. Her name was Lily, and she immediately ran up to me and gave me a warm, huge hug. As she hugged me, she whispered to me, "I've been looking all over for you." And she pulled back, still wearing that same big smile. It was strange. She made me feel like I immediately belonged here, but also as if I've known her my whole life. I just accepted it for what it was and found my place at my desk, next to hers, per her request. From that day forward, our friendship and bond blossomed at an astonishing pace. We immediately became close friends, closer than any of my previous friendships that I've had. It was as though we were two pieces of the same puzzle, fitting together in everything that we did or said. Our interests aligned perfectly, our pet peeves matched, and it was uncanny how often we knew what the other was thinking, or how we could complete each other's thoughts and sentences as we got older. However, nobody else seemed to grasp our connection to one another, nor could they understand the depths of our friendship. It seemed to transcend a normal BFF situation. And while I could sense that it was a strong friendship, I didn't think of it as anything else. But for Lily, there was more to it. Over time, she would make comments like, "I'm so happy that you're finally here. I've been waiting forever for you to come back." And then the statement that really made me curious, "I'm so happy that we got to do this again." I used to just think that they were weird comments and never said anything about it, thinking it was just Lily. At this point, we were probably around 12. I know that I thought the comments were a little out there, but it was always something that I could shrug off. She was highly intelligent, but also had a quirky side to her, so I just thought it was her odd choice of words. But that last comment really made me question things. And since it got the best of me, I questioned her about those almost cryptic comments. She looked at me bewildered and asked, "You don't remember? You don't remember us before these bodies?" I was confused. What on earth did she mean by these bodies? I know that I had to have a weird look on my face, and I know that she could read it too. She looked surprised, and maybe even a bit disappointed as she said, "Oh, I thought you knew already. She asked me if I remembered my last life, the one where we grew up together. Again, I made a comment to her about not knowing what she was talking about, and was confused about the growing up part. We were still kids. We hadn't grown up yet. And I certainly hadn't known her the 12 years I'd been on this earth. I asked her what she meant, and after giving me another look of pity, she agreed to explain, but made me promise not to tell anyone as they wouldn't believe her. And I promised. She began to tell the story of two friends from a time long ago. She said those two girls were us. They did everything that they could together. They met in high school and had been inseparable since. They shopped together. They did chores together. They even went to each other's houses as adults just to talk and hang out. She described how they were both married, but while their husbands worked, they found time to be together to do whatever they wanted. Lily even stopped her story to say that we were living at the wrong time. She then explained how, even though they were just friends, it didn't stop people from gossiping and spreading rumors. Dangerous rumors for that time. The first time she explained this to me, that was pretty much where she left the story, telling me that the two of us once lived in a different life at a different time. I was still shocked and confused. At the time, I didn't even know of the phrase past lives or what reincarnation was. However, at the same time, I believed her. I had no reason to. I still didn't even fully understand what she was talking about, but something was making sense in my head, or telling me that what she was saying was the truth. I told her that while I didn't fully understand the concept, I did believe her. So, after embracing what she explained as the truth, she became more open with me and told me even more stories of things that she remembered from the past. She said that while she had darker blonde hair and I had black hair in this life, it was the opposite. She said that she'd looked completely different, but said that she knew it was me because my green eyes looked exactly the same. She told me about different things that we liked to do, like gardening. We had started a garden at her home where we grew all kinds of different flowers and sold them as is or made oils and soaps with them. Her stories were always fun to listen to, as she made it seem so magical and like we genuinely enjoyed our lives. But she never explained how we ended up in our current life. Once again, I asked her about it. I asked her why did we get a second life in the first place. She seemed hesitant to tell me, saying that it made her sad, but I barely understood this as is, so I wanted to know as much as possible. Reluctantly, she finally agreed to explain it. As mentioned, the rumors and gossip that revolved around us only got worse, to the point that it caused suspicion in my husband at the time. We'd gotten into an argument, he became violent, and I succumbed to my injuries. Lily said that no one would talk to her about it when she showed up at my home and saw the medics. When she finally found out what had happened, everyone blamed her, saying that she ruined mine and her own marriage. Saying that she was heartbroken was an understatement. She was inconsolable for weeks and no one seemed to care. She said her husband didn't seem to have the same thoughts, but he also wasn't comforting her. It was at a time where men didn't normally show their feelings or their soft sides. She then told me how she couldn't get past that feeling of guilt and sorrow, and only saw one way out of it. She left a letter explaining everything, and then locked herself in the basement. But after she finished explaining the ending, she immediately perked back up and said that we shouldn't be sad because we were given a second chance. She said that she remembered her past life at a younger age, but when she talked about it or questioned it with her parents, they also had no clue what she was talking about, which made her think that no one would understand or remember, so she never talked about it again. That was until she had a dream where she was talking to someone who told her that I had come back too, and that we would meet again. That was what kept her going. Then, when I walked into class that day, she knew that it was me. It was kind of hard to take it all in at such a young age, but everything I said, that she told me about, and I believed her. The manner in which she explained it all and the emotions that she expressed as she told me everything was enough for me to know that it was the truth. I remember asking my parents about reincarnation around the same time, and the most I was really told was that it wasn't part of their religion, and they were very clear about that. I could tell that they didn't want to even entertain the idea, so when they asked me where I'd heard it from, I just told them that I saw it in a magazine. From then on, I never talked to anyone else about our past lives, except for Lily. Getting to the present time, we're both in our late 20s. We're both married to very loving and understanding husbands, and the four of us actually get along really well and spend a lot of time together. I actually have a little girl, and Lily is pregnant with her first as well. If I could remember my past life, I'm sure that our bond that we have now is just as strong as our previous one. Once again, we do a lot of the same things together. I also felt comfortable enough to explain our past lives to my husband, and while he didn't understand it at first, when Lily started explaining it more while her and her husband were over, I could see the look of intrigue as he listened. As mentioned, they have both been very understanding and open-minded. Overall, I could not ask for a better life. The family that I've created and chosen are truly the ones that have been there the most for me, and the most important. And for that, I am incredibly thankful for whatever it was that gave Lily and I a second chance. Hello. I would like to share an experience that my daughter actually had as a 7-year-old. I've been researching and watching a lot about past lives, thanks to her as well. And I'm learning a lot about it too. This all started about 5 or 6 years ago. My daughter, Brooke, was home from school for a snow day, and I was quite frankly feeling pretty crummy. I'd been laying on the couch, watching TV, trying not to appear miserable on the outside, and Brooke was in her room playing. I could hear her TV and her talking as if she was playing with her toys. As I laid there just trying to relax, I started hearing some unusual sound effects and phrases coming from her that I had never really heard before. She was making sounds like an airplane, as well as acting as if she was talking to someone. It wasn't alarming, but it still caught my attention, and being curious, I got up to check on her and see what she was doing. I approached the open door and watched as she was sitting at her desk, holding a piece of paper that she had drawn some kind of W shape on and cut out. She had asked to use the scissors earlier. As she held onto the paper, rocking it side to side, she also moved her hands back and forth as if she was pulling levers and pushing buttons. She also had on my husband's old broken headset. She's very creative and likes to play with things like that, so when he went to throw it away, she asked if she could have it. As she sat there wearing the headset, moving her arms around, and was speaking the whole time using phrases and jargon that I had never heard before. Roger, this is Mustang 12, engines humming smoothly, altitude 15,000 feet. I stood there dumbfounded, not having any clue where she would have picked any of this up. I had figured out that she was pretending to fly an airplane, but as to how she knew those terms was lost on me. Neither me nor my husband have watched anything about planes. I couldn't even think of anyone that she may have been around that could have watched or talked about planes either. She always talked like a normal 7-year-old would. She had a slight lisp at the time, but it wasn't really noticeable unless she got really excited about what she was talking about. But when I watched her, her voice was steady, monotone, and not a single slip in her speech. I had never seen this before, and I had no explanation for it. I stayed where I was, listening to her as she described landing the plane, and when it was stopped, she put her steering wheel down, took her headset off, and sighed. I didn't mean to startle her, but as she did that, I softly called out for her, making her jump. I cheerfully said, "What are you playing, Brooke?" "I was flying, Mommy. I was up in the sky in a big plane just like I used to." Obviously confused, I asked more questions. "What do you mean like you used to?" She had never been on a plane, and, in fact, I had only been on one before she was even born. My husband had been, due to his job, but she had only ever gone with me once to drop him off. Not even in the airport. When I used to fly planes, my favorite was a P-51 Mustang, and I was really, really good at it. She then went to her desk and started pointing at her wheel and random parts on her desk. She was naming off what I assume were different switches and gauges. I don't remember everything she said, but I wish I would have asked her about them again and written them all down. I just know that I stood there over her desk as she spoke in confidence about her plane, trying to grasp what I was listening to. After she finished her explanation, I asked her how she knew all of this, and that's what started me down this rabbit hole. She said, "I just know it. I learned it from school that grown-ups go to. I was very good at it, but the bad guys broke my plane and I couldn't stop it. But I want to fly planes again. It was a lot of fun." Granted, that was paraphrased a bit, but that was basically what she explained. I had heard of kids talking about a potential past life before, but never really thought more into it. Not expecting that to ever be something that I would experience. You know, the whole, well, that would never happen to me. But I began to ask Brooke more questions about what she was talking about, and how long she had remembered this. She said that she's remembered it for a long time, but couldn't really pinpoint it. She was still a child, though. I then asked her if she remembered anything else other than airplanes. She sat on her bed, squeezing her eyes closed, and smiling, and then she said the name. Martha. I remember Martha. She was very pretty like you, Mommy. And I loved her. I'm sad that I can't see her anymore. She looked a little sad when she said this, even though she was smiling, but she said it with such conviction. How could I not believe her? We also don't have anyone in our family that I could think of named Martha. I even asked my husband and my mom if they knew of anyone, and they couldn't recall anyone either. Still feeling a bit surprised by this new information, I brought her into the kitchen to have lunch. The rest of the day continued on as normal, but I couldn't wait to tell my husband when he got home. When he did, and I explained everything to him, I could tell by the look on his face that he was a bit skeptical about it. He tried to reason it just like I did. She must have heard about planes or something and repeated it, but I explained to him how detailed she was. There was no way she could have heard this somewhere and memorized it to that extent. She gets her favorite SpongeBob quotes wrong sometimes, and she's obsessed with that show. My husband started coming around to the idea and was even more convinced, when he heard her talking about it in front of him. She even mentioned how her name used to be Peter, and that she wanted to marry Martha when she came back from her last trip, but that's when the accident happened. She would bring it up on other occasions after that day, too. While we were outside playing in the snow, she crawled along the ground and shouted out other quotes that sounded like military terms. My husband had a hard time reasoning that one away. Both of our grandfathers and my grandmother were military when they were younger. That was how my grandparents had met. But they've all since passed, so she wouldn't have heard it from them. I had been casually looking into past life stuff at this point, but when she came up to me one day and asked me if I knew Martha or how to find her, I felt the urge to look more into this. She seemed so sincere, and she was so sad when she said that she wanted to make sure Martha was happy after she was gone. I considered looking into a therapist who specialized in past life regressions for children, but I couldn't find anyone in our area that would have been convenient, and I didn't want to put her through something that could potentially put her through trauma or give her PTSD, if she remembered something worse than flying a plane that crashed. What I did do was check out historical information at my local library in hopes to find closure for the person my daughter used to be. While my daughter was in school, I went to the library and started looking for anything I could about a pilot, possibly some kind of military pilot by the name of Peter. I was on the right path, but the info I was finding was limited. But then the librarian gave me a good suggestion. She mentioned a local historian that collected a lot of old war memorabilia and hosted many events about them. She suggested that I ask him about it, and gave me his contact info, so I did just that. I contacted the man and explained what little info I had, but just kind of explained that I was looking to expand a family tree. To my surprise, he was actually able to find something in a newspaper similar to an obituary, but more of a mass one for those enlisted that may have passed or were missing. There was a Peter listed as having passed away after a plane accident. The man then helped me find more info on this Peter, and we found another article with the picture of Peter, and, you guessed it, his lovely Martha. They were at some kind of ball or dance. The names were printed under the photo. That solidified it in me. Everything Brooke had told me had to be true. We didn't know this Peter or Martha, but somehow Brooke did. This man made a copy of the picture for me, and I took it home with me. When Brooke came home from school, I showed her the picture and asked her if she knew who it was, folding over the bottom so she couldn't see the names. She let out a huge gasp, and explained that it was her and Martha at some kind of serviceman's ball. I forget what she called it off the top of my head. She hugged me and thanked me for finding it, but when I asked her if she wanted to keep the picture, she said no. She said that she had really just wanted to see her one more time. I didn't ask her about her past life and memories after that. If she brought it up, then we would talk about it. But otherwise, I left it alone. And I think that's exactly what was supposed to happen. Over time, I noticed that she didn't talk about it as much, nor did she play the airplane game like she used to. I thought about this at one point and asked her about it, and she seemed completely confused. I mentioned Peter, and she laughed at me, saying, "No, Mommy, I'm Brooke." So, I'm pretty sure what I did helped Peter realize that he had passed. And, since I believed his story and acknowledged it, he was able to move on. It was an incredible experience, but I'm also thankful that it didn't stick around for her, in fear of it causing distress for her as she got older. Writing this out for you, though, has made me really consider putting together a short book, or a journal, maybe, of all the experiences that we had from this extraordinary phenomenon, just to have something to look back on, and maybe show Brooke when she's older. If I do, I'll be sure to share it with you too. And thank you for reading. I'm a mom of 3 kids, ages 14, 9, and 5. As many may be aware, 2020 opened up some schooling possibilities, and I think both my kids and I loved it. I was already working remotely, but now my kids were home with me, and we always made the most of it. We all got set up at our dining room table, and I even brought my laptop in there to work with them. We got very creative with our activities as a family, and even our meals. I feel like I got to learn more about my kids in that time and became even closer to them, and I was thankful for that. The story is related to one of those moments. While we were all working at the table, my 9-year-old, Allie, became frustrated with her work, so I stopped to help her. My 5-year-old, Jaden, has a late birthday. It's in October, so he wouldn't start kindergarten until the following year. However, he loved being a part of this, and making him sit it out would just be mean, so I got a few workbooks for him online that he could work on with us, and he was satisfied with that. Every day he would come to the table with his cute little play computer, some books and crayons, and it was always adorable. One of the pages in his workbook was a section for him to color in different people and different occupations, such as a doctor, a police officer, a fireman, etc. He was talking about everything he was coloring, but when he came across the fireman, he seemed to pause, staring at it, before he finally started coloring again. I just thought that he was trying to decide how to color it, or something like that. I knew that he couldn't read it so well, so I knew that he wasn't reading the page, but it was pretty obviously a fireman. He had on the uniform, the front of the truck was behind him, and he was holding the long hose. Jaden also loved fire trucks. So when he started coloring, I made a comment about it, asking what color he was going to make the dog sitting next to the man. He told me that he was going to make it look like our current dog, Sparky, and continued coloring. I smiled and let him do as he was doing as I did my own work. Shortly after, he then looked at me and asked, "Do you remember when I was big?" I looked at him smiling and said, "Oh, you're a big boy now." He rolled his eyes and said, "No, when I was big like you, a grown-up." A little confused, I told him, "Well, you aren't a grown-up yet, hun, but you will be. Just don't grow up too fast on me." He held out his arms on the table like he was exasperated and explained, "No, I used to be big, but then my bedroom was on fire and I got really hot, and the fireman helped me get out, but it was too hard to breathe and I got too tired. It wasn't his fault, but that's why I want to be a fireman. I want to help people too." My first thought was, what the heck did my kid watch recently? My oldest, Spencer, was looking back and forth between me and Jaden, obviously just as confused as I was. I asked Jaden why he would say all that, and he had the most serious look that a 5-year-old could have, and said that he didn't know, but he could remember it. Spencer waved his arms in the air and said, "Ooh, he was reincarnated," then started laughing. I gave him the mom look. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. Once he lowered his arms, Jaden asked what that meant, but I told him it wasn't important and to continue working, which he did. I was confused by this conversation. I guess reincarnation was a possible explanation, but I was a skeptic, to be honest. I told my husband about it when he returned home, and when we put Jaden to bed that night, We asked him about it again. Jaden explained the exact same thing. He explained how he was an adult, how he'd gone to bed, and woke up feeling really hot. He said that he couldn't touch the doorknob because it hurt him. He then told me what the fireman looked like, and sadly explained how he got too tired by the time he was out, so he went to sleep. But that he couldn't remember anything after that. My husband asked him out loud where he had heard that from, and he said, "From my head. I remember it." We just left that alone and went to bed, talking about it in our own room. At first, we both kind of thought that it was creepy, but also assumed that he must have seen it somewhere. There was no other explanation for this. Nothing, at least, that made sense. I don't know if it was because we showed interest in his stories or what, but Jaden started talking about the past life more. He was brushing his teeth and started playing with his hair, and I asked what he was doing. He said that his hair used to be really dark, like Iron Man's, and he asked me why he didn't have a beard like he used to. All of my kids have reddish orange hair, never dark hair. Neither did my husband and I, so I told him that he didn't have dark hair, and that he would get a beard when he got older. Again, becoming annoyed by me, he turned to me, hands out, and slowly said, "When I was a grown-up." I just apologized and told him I was having trouble understanding. He told me that it was okay, and he gave the best explanation that a 5-year-old could, about, you guessed it, a reincarnation. He mentioned how he felt tired after the fire, and that all he could see was dark. He said that he waited there until he heard someone calling his name, and then got mad because he couldn't remember his name. And then someone told him his new name was Jaden. The next thing he remembered after that was a bright light, and being really cold. Then he said that he was here. It was such a strange thing to listen to, considering how consistent he was with his story. The details all remained the same. Jaden mentioned his other life on multiple occasions, and it was probably consistent throughout the rest of the year. But then, one night while everyone was asleep, I heard a soft, "Mommy," being whispered to me. I rolled over and opened my eyes to see Jaden just standing there over me, holding his little light-up dinosaur. I asked him if he was okay, because it was unusual for him to come to our room. My other two were very attached, but Jaden had always been pretty independent. As soon as we got him his own big kid bed, he stayed in his room every night with no issues. He looked at me smiling and simply said, "I remember now. My name? It was Arthur. But I'm happy here as Jaden. Thank you for being my mom." He then patted me on the head and walked back out of the room. I got up to go check on him, being half awake. I had no idea what he was going on about. I got to his room to see him lay back down in his bed, tell me goodnight, and then he fell asleep. The next morning, I asked him about it while we ate breakfast, and he basically had no recollection of this. Spencer suggested that maybe he was sleepwalking, but his choice of words was what stood out to me. However, no matter how many times I asked Jaden about it or mentioned the other person in the fire, he looked at me confused. He said that his name was Jaden, and that it always had been. So, I guess that's over. His memory or vision lasted a little under a year, and after remembering his name, it was done. Since then, it has not been brought up again by him, but the rest of us remember what he said and described. But now I find myself conflicted on what exactly it was that my kid experienced. Thank you for all the awesome stories. It's relaxing to listen to while I drive. Hearing the past life stories on your channel made me want to share mine. For context, I've been fascinated with politics since I was in middle school. I'm a moderate right, I'm an artist, public speaker, and sometimes dabble in writing. This will be important later. When I was 10, I had a dream that I was somebody else. Instead of a little girl, I was a young man. Everything was in black and white, and I walked up the steps at a library. I felt an overwhelming sense of fear and dread. Everybody hated me, but I knew that whoever the man was that I was supposed to be was a good person. It was in a city in the Midwest, and all I remember was that vision, but it always stuck with me. When I told my mom, she told me that it was probably a glimpse into my past life. I left it at that until years later when I was telling a friend about it. She, a medium, told me that it was without a doubt a look at my past life, and that it was at that age that people see visions of past lives. She offered to do a past life reading, and I accepted. During the reading, she revealed that in my past life, I was a man named Tom, but went by Tommy. I grew up in a rural area as a happy kid, but moved to the city to pursue a career in politics as an adult. I want to say it was either Cincinnati or Chicago in the 1950s. I was walking up those steps to the library, as it was the release of my controversial book. I was a liberal Republican, which was unacceptable back then. She told me that I was working on an idea for a policy, and that I had to bend some rules to make it happen. Already a controversial figure, this made me appear unethical. I had more haters than followers, sadly. She told me that whatever I was working on, the idea was to bring people together, but it only made everybody hate me more. One fateful day, after a speech or event, there was a group of people who proceeded to crowd me. They tied me to a tree, and they beat the life out of me. I died. I was 27. And, at the time that I got this reading, I was 27. Interesting still, I had a supervisor at work who I had a deep connection with. It turned out that she was my assistant in this past life. The whole experience was surreal for me, as I learned that past lives often influence our skills and interests in our present lives. So that, my friends, was another collection of some past life stories, some chilling past life stories. It feels like the more I do these, the more I get them submitted to me, so I guess we'll see how that goes. Some interesting stuff that you all have to say, that you all experienced, I suppose. Is that the best way to put that? I don't know. I'm very unwordy today. Yeah, some really interesting stories. Past life stories are always interesting stories. They kind of feel like an intersection between glitch stories and paranormal stories. Even more so than glitch stories already being, on a parallel with paranormal. These feel like this weird intersection of that parallel. So, I love them. You all seem to love them. And that's all that matters, right? Yes. Yes, it is. If you did enjoy them, please do hit that thumbs up button, as it does help the video perform better. You can also leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts, as that also helps the video perform better. And subscribe to the channel if you are new and liked what you heard. If you also have a story you'd like to share, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so, as that gives me more content for me to read to you all. There you go. That's how you word sometimes. Yeah, if you ever experienced a past life experience or know someone who has and want to write the story, I would love to read it, and I promise my audience would love to hear it. Yep. You can also join Patreon memberships for early access to content like this, so long as it goes up early. You can also super chat, a super thanks, which is just a tip to the channel, a bit of a support, extra bit of support. Just saying thank you and such. Never expected, always appreciated. And I think that's all I have to say. My sinuses are kicking my back end today. Last night's stream went pretty well. I wasn't having these issues, but now today, my sinuses are beating the hell out of me. So there's that. All that said, friends, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your weekend. Hope I see you again here very soon. Should have a sleep video out tomorrow if you're interested in that. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. Please don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, my friends, much love and sleep well.